Almost immediately after the release of the Copper Age, 25W41A dropped, adding the Nautilus, proper implementation for zombie horses, and of course, the Spear. The first and previously only time a new tiered tool or weapon was added to the game was with the addition of the Hoe. This was during the very early development of Java Edition back in 2010. After playing around a bit with the Spear, I found that I really enjoy it. I especially like that you can use the new Lunge enchantment to do some pretty extreme elytra skipping. Speaking of enchantments, what can you actually enchant the Spear with? Spears aren't the first new weapon to be added to the game. Crossbows, tridents, and now maces have also made their way into the game, each coming with their own unique enchantments. I was quite surprised to see that spears can be enchanted with pretty much every single sword enchantment, with the only exception being Sweeping Edge. To me, this is the perfect way of handling spear enchantments. Sweeping Edge becomes an exclusive enchantment for the sword, and spears can instead be enchanted with Lunge. More importantly though, the Spear being so enchantable means all the more opportunities for unique and varied textures. I've wanted to do a visual enchanting update for Caelesti for quite some time now. I actually made a pretty in-depth prototype a few years ago, which was released as a part of version 0.19, but I wasn't entirely happy with the direction it was going in, and Sisku of Visual Enchantments had just discovered a much more efficient way of compositing textures, so ultimately I decided to scrap this system entirely. When the new item model system was released, it became clear that visual enchantments would now be possible in vanilla, and with the recent addition of the Spear, I just had to give it a go. Even with that original prototype, I was already very interested in adding proper weapon variety to the game, and so you can see here, the Bane of Arthropods axe was just a halberd. Now, with spears added to the game, I can actually add a halberd to Caelesti as a visual enchantment for spears. Life-changing. So before I talk a little bit more about the spears, I wanted to quickly introduce you to a concept which I was introducing for the next update for Caelesti. You can see here the sword that I'm holding is quite long. It's quite a bit longer than you would usually expect to see, and if we look behind me, the pommel of the sword is also quite a bit bigger than it should be as well. This was a new concept I was experimenting with before spears were even announced, where items would be larger than they would appear in the inventory, and they would have a separate unique thumbnail which appears in the inventory slot. That way, every time you view an item in the inventory, it's the correct size, but we can have it kind of break those boundaries in game and be much larger than it otherwise would be. Now, the way I've gone about doing this, and the way that Mojang have gone about doing this with the new spears, is a little bit different, but they do effectively achieve the same thing. One of the most notable differences between these two systems is that when I pick up my oversized items, they expand to show the full-size item texture, whereas the vanilla spear retains its 16:16 thumbnail. Which of these systems do you prefer? So, in preparation for some visual enchantments being added to Caelesti, I've made some quick mock-ups here for both the sword and also the spear. So first of all, for the sword, you can see here I've got the regular sword to the left, and then a fire aspect sword here on the right. When the sword is enchanted with fire aspect, it gets this orange and yellow glow down the center of the blade, and my plan there is to have that animated at some point in the future. Given that there's already a separate model for the thumbnail of the item in the inventory and the held item, I can actually do something quite interesting here with the fire aspect sword. You can see here that when a sword is enchanted with fire aspect, it gets this additional large pane over the blade, which showcases a unfinished fire texture. I'm in the process of learning how to do fire pixel art, alright. When you pick up the item in the inventory, you also get that same fire texture, because essentially it's switching out to the held version of the sword whenever you pick it up. And now for the reason why you clicked on the video, we have these spear enchantments. They look so good. I'm so happy with these already. So much like in version 0.19 when I first attempted visual enchantments, each tier of weapon will have a slightly unique shape and appearance for their visual enchantments. So these are just the diamond versions of these tools. The netherite versions will probably be very similar because they are an upgrade from diamond, but other tiers of weapons like gold, iron, copper, they will have their own unique appearance for each of these visual enchantments. Here we have the regular diamond spear. You can see it kind of expands to its full size just like the sword when picked up, and then we also have sharpness, which adds 2 extra blades on the side of the spear like that, as well as making the head of the spear much longer and much more sharp looking. Next up we have the smite enchantment, which is actually based off of a French polearm called a vulge. Now I really like this one because I feel like it matches up really well with something else I have planned, which is to have the smite swords look like giant cleavers, just like they did again in version 0.19. And last but not least, I want to show you the Bane of Arthropods spear, which is actually based on a Chinese polearm called the Chi. Or Ji? I'm not really sure. It's Chi or Ji. I don't know. Just before I let you go, I wanted to let you know what the full plan was for the rest of the visual enchantments. So you've probably gathered already from the examples I've shown today that I do want to have mutually exclusive enchantment textures, so things like sharpness, smite, and Bane of Arthropods. You can't have multiple of those on one weapon, so having a unique head for the weapon based on those enchantments is a really good way of doing it in my opinion. I do also want to have fire aspect be highlighted as well, just because it feels very visceral and it feels like it really changes the way that the weapon is used and the way that it affects mobs, and it also just looks good, or it will look good when I get my act together and actually finish this texture. As for other enchantments for the weapon, I do want to have a focus on certain specific things. So again, here I've laid out Sharpness, Smite, and Bane of Arthropods, as they will have 3 unique variants for each of those. And we also have Lunge for the spear, because again, it's the exclusive spear enchantment. You want to have a special highlight for when a spear has Lunge. Lunge and Mending are actually mutually exclusive, so we'll have to have something figured out for that. You can either have a Mending spear, or you can have a Lunge spear, which seems kind of weird to me, but given that Lunge uses up so much durability, I guess it makes sense that you wouldn't want to use Lunge, which is kind of a destructible enchantment, with Mending, which is quite a high value enchantment. I've mentioned already how I want to have a focus on Fire Aspect. You can apply Fire Aspect to both swords and spears, so I'll have something unique for each of those. And finally, as I mentioned before, Sweeping Edge is now the exclusive enchantment for swords, so I want to have a unique way of identifying when a sword has its exclusive enchantment. Now, both swords and spears can also be enchanted with a number of other things, such as knockback and looting and unbreaking, but really, I don't see a need to make those enchantments visually distinct. I think it's going to lead to too much noise on an item's texture, and I would much rather focus on things like, again, mutually exclusive enchantments and things that are exclusive to that specific weapon. Having different enchantments unlock more weapon and tool variety is already pretty neat, but if we strip away the cool factor, visual enchantments do actually serve a purpose. A really good example of this is when you need to distinguish between a Silk Touch and Fortune pickaxe. In reality, every other enchantment you have on either of those pickaxes is irrelevant. The only visual distinction you actually need is for the enchantment that's mutually exclusive. This same logic of focusing on mutually exclusive enchantments and enchantments that are exclusive to that weapon type are also going to be carried over to things like the trident, the mace, and even things like bows and crossbows as well. So following the same logic, I'm going to have unique textures for both channeling and riptide, so you can distinguish between the 2 different types of tridents that you might want to use. And I'm also going to have a unique trident head for impaling, since impaling is the trident enchantment. And again, with the mace, I'm also going to have unique textures for breach and density, which I'm only just now discovering are actually mutually exclusive as well. And there will of course be another texture for wind burst, which is again the mace enchantment. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I was excited to give you guys an update on what I'm currently working on, and also ask for your input on what else I could add as weapon variants. In version 0.19, I decided to have a bit of fun with the weapons you'd barely ever see. So if you enchanted a wooden axe with smite, you'd just have a crucifix. I thought that was pretty funny. I won't be making a devlog style video for the visual enchantments, simply because the vast majority of the work is just editing text files. I can't imagine it would make for a very entertaining video. However, these visual enchantments will actually be available to use well before the release of Caelesti Update 47, and I'll have some further info about that in an upcoming video. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for some more Caelesti content. Take care. Bye-bye.